Study Section 3. Forms of Poetry. Introduction. In this study section, you'll be exposed to formal classifications and backgrounds to different kinds of English poetry. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this section, you should be able to classify different poems according to their formal organizations. Terminology. Open form poetry. A type of poetry that has no specific patterns of rhyme, rhythm, meter, imagery, syntax, or stanzas. Closed form poetry. A type of form or structure in poetry that exhibits regularity and consistency in such elements as rhyme, meter, line, length, line groupings, and number of lines. Verse. This could mean any of 1. A line of metrical writing, 2. A stanza, or 3. Any composition written in meter. Stanza. A division or unit of a poem that is repeated in the same form, either with similar or identical patterns, or rhyme and meter, or with variations from one stanza to another. Rhyme. A matching similarity of sounds in 2 or more words, especially when their accented vowels and all succeeding consonants are identical. Rhythm. The recurrence of accent or stress in lines of verse. The structure that poems take and the way their forms are organized is one of the distinctive characteristics of poems. This varies from writer to writer. Poetry is written in lines which form stanzas. Each unit of stanza contains ideas that are linked to others after it. According to FBO Akpobaro, 2003, 88, lines and stanzas provide a limited context, space or matrix within which the poet must convey his thoughts in a very concise form. Lines and stanzas help the poet to be concise, vivid, and hence poetical. Lines in poetry may be longer or short, rhythmical or non-rhythmical, and the manner of their organization may be in various kinds of poetry and poetic types and styles. Poems are also written in free verse. Classification of English poems. Most English poems are versified, and their classifications sometimes overlap. There are 2 main forms of poetry in English. They are 1. Open form, 2. Closed form. Open form poetry. The open form poetry refers to poems whose structures are flexible and open to changes by the poet. It is a form that allows the poet opportunities for expansion, variability, and creativity. There are no dominant meters or line length. Walt Whitman's poem titled Reconciliation is an example. Word over all, beautiful as the sky. Such poems do not have rhyme scheme or basic meter. The reader's attention is sustained through other means. Thus, the structure of the poem is not forced on it by tradition. Poetry in open form was called free verse. There are forms of irregular and unrhymed poetry that are not constrained by traditional demands of meters. One of such is the nonsense verse. It is a form of verse that is humorous or whimsical. It shows resistance to any personal or allegorical interpretation. It uses comical, meaningless words. It makes the words sound purposeful. 'Twas a billing and the silly stoves, the drill and gumbo in the wake. All mine by were the borogoves and the mumeratograph. Analyze the poem by Walt Whitman below What sort of verse did he employ? A noiseless, patient spider. A noiseless, patient spider. I marked where on a little promontory it stood isolated. Marked how to explore the vacant vast surrounding. It launched forth filaments, filaments, filaments out of itself, ever unreeling them, ever tireless speeding them. And you, O my soul, where you stand, surrounded, detached in measureless oceans of space, till the bridge you will need be formed, till the dotile anchor hold, till the gossamer thread you fling catch somewhere, O my soul. Discussion. This is a free verse poem, although only a simple metaphor is used without employing regular rhyme, scheme, or rhythm. We can see normal pauses in the poem, unlike the typical limitations of metrical fits. Tip. Features of free verse. 1. Free verse poems have no regular meter and rhythm. 2. They do not follow a proper rhyme scheme, such as this poem do not have any set rules. 3. This type of poem is based on normal pauses and natural rhythmical phrases as compared to the artificial constraints of normal poetry. Closed form poetry. Whereas the closed form poetry has a fixed structure with specific traditional rhyming patterns and attributes which make them memorable. An example is a sonnet, which has 14 lines and specific rhyme patterns. The English sonnet, for example, has a pattern of 3 quatrains and a couplet, which rhymes as A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. This will be discussed in subsequent lectures. The structures of a sonnet cannot be changed, although varieties exist in the form. Edgar Roberts and Henry Jacobs, 2007-923, wrote, "Over the centuries, English and American poets have appropriated and evolved many closed forms. Among the most important of these are blank verse, the couplets, the tercets or triplets, tensarimal, the villanellid, quatrain, the sonnets, the lyric, the ode, the ballad, the elegy, together with other forms like haiku, the epigram, the epitaph, the limerick." Limerick is a short comic verse form of 5 anapaestic lines, rhyming AA, BBA. Here is the example. A flea and a flying in a flue, A, were caught, so what could they do? A. Said the fly, let us flee. B. Let us fly, said the flea. B. So they flew, a flaw in the flue. A. Anonymous poet. And there was an old man of Chatham, A, who kept a tame sheep in his room. A. To remind me is said. B. Of someone who is dead. B. But I never can recollect whom. A. W.R. Ing. Epitaph is a short poem that is witty and also satirical about the death of an individual. It is also a short comment about someone's death. Epigram is a terse, pointed statement or a short poem, often written in couplets, which end in a humorous or satirical way, to which the rest of the composition is intended to lead. S.T. Coleridge, in What is an Epigram, tries to define it thus: a dwarfish whole, its body brevity and width, its soul, I am His Highness, dog at Kale. Pray tell me, sir, whose dog are you? Its pattern is a brief couplet and its tone is sarcastic. Besides, other close forms include a tercet, also called triplet, which is 3 lines unit of poem rhyming AAA, and thereby keeping to one sound, as in the example below, Julius Caesar, the Roman Caesar, squashed his wife with a lemon squeezer. A variation of the tercet is tersarima. According to Roberts and Jacobs, stanzas are interlocked through a pattern that requires a center termination in one tercet to be rhymed twice in the next ABA, BCB, CDC, DED, and so on. Yet, another variation of tercet is the villanelle. The villanelle was originally an Italian peasant song. It developed in France in the Middle Ages. The Waking by Theodore Rotek. I want to sleep and take my waking slow. I feel my fate in what I cannot fear. I learn by going where I have to go. We think by failing. What is there to know? I hear my being dance from ear to ear. I wake to sleep and make my walking slow. Of those close beside me, which are you? God bless the ground. I shall walk softly there and learn by going where I have to go. Light takes the tree, but who can tell us how? The lowly worm climbs up a winding stairs. I wake to sleep and take my waking slow. Great nature has another thing to do. To you and me, so take the lively air and learn by going where I have to go. This shaking keeps me steady. I should know what falls away is always and is near. I wake to sleep and take my waking slow. I learn by going where I have to go. It is a poem of 19 lines, 6 tercets and 1 line. The concluding stanzas consist 4 lines. In the example provided above, the rhyme pattern is ABA, 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 ABAA. Another form is a couplet. It is made of 2 lines connected by content and rhyme, and also identical by meter and length. Most English couplets are an iambic pentameter, and they have been in poetry since Chaucer used them in the Canterbury Tales in the 14th century. In the 17th and 18th century, the couplets were adopted for epic and heroic poetry, for which reason it was called the heroic couplet. The sonnet is a poem of 14 lines and one of the most popular close forms. It started as an Italian form created by Petrarch, the Italian poet. The sonnet was therefore named in his honor and later adapted into English poetry in the early 16th century. The Petrarchian sonnet is said to be written mostly in iambic pentameter. It contains an octave and a septet. The octave presents a problem, but the resolution is presented in the septet. The rhyme scheme is OBAR / ABBA / CDE / or such other variations as CDC / CDC, also be found in the septet. The sonnet tradition was adapted by Shakespeare, who popularized it through the development of Shakespearean or English sonnets. Its rhyme scheme differs from the Petrarchian in that it contains 3 quatrains and a couplet. It presents a single line of argument or thought in its 4 parts. The central idea is developed in the quatrain, while the couplet provides the answer or climax. Its rhyme scheme is AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG. Another form of close poetry is the lyric, a form of poem that was originally meant to be sung to the music of a lay, whether as a solo performance or as a group performance. In England, lyric poetry flourished in the Middle Ages, and such manuscript collections as early lyrics were produced at the period. However, as time went on, the connection between poetry and music were broken. In modern times, a lyric is described as a short poem that expresses the thoughts and feelings of love and emotion of a single speaker. It is usually written in 5 or 6 stanzas. Roberts and Jacobs explained that a lyric may be personal, public, philosophical, religious, and political. Lyric sometimes relates an incident or draws a scene. It does not usually relate a series of incidents. An example is A.E. Housman, Loveliest of Traits. The sonnet, ballad, and ode are some of its examples. Ballads originated from oral tradition. Sometimes oral ballads tells the story of heroic deeds in song form. It was a popular song that attacked a person or an institution. It combined narration with dramatic dialogue. In recent times, literary ballad is described as a short poem, a short stanza, in which a popular story is graphically narrated. It imitates the feature of oral ballad, such as dramatic conflict or the interaction of human and supernatural beings. Among the examples of a literary ballad are La Belle Dame Sans Merci by John Keats, Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Coleridge, and the 15th century anonymous narrative ballad titled Sir Patrick Spens. Note: a ballad has the following common traits. A. The beginning is often abrupt. B. The story is told through dialogue and action. C. The language is simple or folksy. D. The theme is often tragic, though comic ballads do exist. And E. The ballad contains a restrained, repeated several lines. Ode. Ode is a lyric poem in rhyme stanza with some length and elevated style. The topic and form of odes are said to be diversified, meditative, and philosophical. The ode is usually much longer than the song or lyric, but usually not as long as the epic poem. Elegy or laments is a lyric concerned with the death of an individual or issues relating to mortality or tragic aspects of life. A popular example is John Milton's Lycidas, which mourns the death of his friend and schoolmate who died by drowning. The poem also describes rural life. Types of poetry. Narrative poetry. This relates a series of events by telling a story through omniscient points of view, in brackets, godlike narrator, in Western literature. It dates back to the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh before 2000 BC and the Homer epic of Odysseus and Iliad. Examples of narrative poetry are romance, epic, and heroic poetry. As a narrative form of poetry, romance derived from the medieval Latin word romanes. It related stories of adventure, heroism, and chivalry. In particular, it was applied to popular courtly stories in verse. According to Margaret Drabble, 2008-69, its thematic preoccupation centered around 3 main things: the legend of Arthur, referred to by John Bode as Matter of Britain; Charlemagne and his knights, Matter of France; and stories about classical heroes, especially Alexander, Martha of Rome. It adopted an allegorical style. Sir Gawain and the Knights of the Green Castle is an example of romance in poetry. From the 15th century, English romance was said to be in prose form. An epic is a lengthy narrative poem which celebrates the achievements of a hero in history. Using a grand style, it employs specific features in its performance. Da Silva and Jegede 2005, 30-4 identified them as follows: action that consists deeds of great valor, a hero of imposing character, and also action that begins in the middle of things, in media res. Others are interaction between men and the supernatural forces. Hero, setting that is vast in scope, elevated style, epic formulae, including invocation of a muse and request for guidance, statement of theme at the beginning, inclusion of instance of sporadic wars, epic oration, and epic simile. Among the great epic of the world are the classical epics, Aeneid, Iliad, and Odysseus, and the English epic, Paradise Lost by John Milton. Dramatic poetry. Dramatic poetry can be defined in the following way. 1. Any verse written for the stage. It is in this sense that Shakespearean plays can be described as dramatic poetry. 2. Verse in dramatic monologue through the voice of an imaginary character who speaks directly without any additional narration by the author, or who speaks as a reply to some character's replies. The poem then becomes a dialogue in which the poem unfolds the conversation between two speakers. Satirical poetry comments on life and experience of man, condemning the foolishness and weakness of man. This is done through the use of sarcasm, irony, and humor. An example is Chaucer's The General Prologue. The poem is both narrative and satiric. Study section summary. In this study section, we have discussed different forms of poetry and the types that are peculiar to each form. Specifically, we have identified open and closed forms of poetry, but we also mentioned that the classification of English poetry is flexible and that a single poem can embrace 2 or 3 forms. End of study section 3. Thanks for listening.